So Israel has gone back into Gaza. They haven't been able to get all their hostages out yet. Hamas are regrouping. Israel has every right to do what they're doing. But of course, predictably, the world's reaction among politicians and the media, with a strong exception of America, by the way, the American leadership, not the American media, at least some parts of the American media, there has been the predictable, Israel's bad, Israel's the one that's doing this, Israel's the aggressor, truth is now false, false is truth. But here is Ben Shapiro talking about this, the reaction, and shedding light on the actual truth of the matter. Have a watch.
The ceasefire in Gaza is officially over. It is over because Hamas continued to walk away from all efforts to extend the ceasefire. Hamas basically insisted that as a condition of the release of the remaining hostages that it is holding, including an American, Idan Alexander, that in exchange for that, Israel would have to end the war and leave Hamas in control of Gaza. And Israel said no, and the United States also said no. And then Hamas continued to maintain that, and they were dragging out the process so they could rearm. Late yesterday, there was news that broke that Hamas was planning apparently some sort of ground incursion into Israel again. They're going to try and break through the border between Gaza and Israel. And Israel responded with heavy fire in Gaza, specifically targeting terror leaders. These were highly targeted strikes. Immediately, Hamas released their usual false bevy of statistics. 300 people. We have no evidence of how many people actually were killed. That is unclear at this point. The IDF took out some of the top leaders of Hamas. They took out some of the top leaders of Islamic Jihad as well. And then they put out a statement saying that these will intensify. The strikes will intensify until you are back at the table talking about the release of these hostages. The IDF had issued evacuation orders for some areas of Gaza. Naturally, the Europeans condemned all this because the Europeans have a very easy time condemning the Israelis for defending themselves and going after terrorists, and they have a very difficult time condemning actual terrorists. They are too busy standing for them. The spokesperson for Palestinian Islamic Jihad was killed in the IDF strikes, apparently. So too was one of the top leaders of Hamas in those strikes. And of course it was going to have to go this way because Hamas was never going to give up the hostages, short of some unpalatable deal in which they remained in control of Gaza, and Israel was never going to allow that. As I said all along, when it came to these hostage negotiations brokered by the United States under President Trump, all along there was never going to be phase two. Phase two was not a possibility. Phase one was the release of certain hostages for a certain amount of time. At a certain point, that was going to hit the end of the road, and Israel is going to have to go back in and finish off Hamas. And that appears to be what is happening right now, short of Hamas making some sort of major concessions by releasing more of the hostages. The media, by the way, are trash and continue to simply report whatever false numbers are put out by Hamas as soon as humanly possible. Well done to our legacy media who've been eating up the propaganda like the latter end of the human centipede for decades now in this particular conflict.
It's so true. There really is such a distortion of reality, of cause and effect, of who is the real aggressor here. And this notion that there should be negotiation, Ben was absolutely right to say, predictably, it was a complete waste of time. You're dealing with people who, for them, a non-negotiable is the destruction of the Jews. So there's nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. The only way to get what you want, including the hostage release, is peace through strength, military pressure. And no, I don't think, in my view, military pressure should mean we'll put pressure on you so you'll come to the negotiating table and then we'll start conceding on all kinds of important things. Military pressure should just be, we're going to keep going after you, keep putting pressure on you, destroying you, until you release them, until you surrender. Not until you'll come to the negotiation table. The whole principle of negotiating with terrorists is insane. This was such common conventional wisdom in the 2000s when I grew up. George Bush would say, we don't negotiate with terrorists. And we'd all say, yeah, obviously. Because if you negotiate with terrorists, you create a terrorist industry. You tell terrorists, it pays to to terrorize. It pays to take hostages. It pays to do all these things. And this time, we have an American administration that's fully behind Israel, that's saying to Israel, yeah, do whatever you need to do. Hopefully, Israel will. And when that means do whatever that we need to do, it should not mean just, okay, we'll destroy Hamas for now, then they'll regroup, and then we have to keep doing this. No, it's unconscionable doing that. There needs to be fundamental change. We tried for 100 years to do two-state solution, to indulge the idea that the Palestinians just want a state of their own. They don't. They're not interested in that. They don't consider themselves a unique people. They consider themselves part of the Arab world. In fact, one of the most common surnames in Gaza is Al-Mazri, which means Egyptian, which is where so many of them are from. The notion that they are a unique people seeking a unique identity and a unique plot of land has been demonstrably false. So there needs to be a major rethink. Israel has fought, shed blood, sweat and tears for this plot of land. Historically, biblically, it's their land, even legally, by the way. At least you could make the case. And so the President of the United States is proposing relocating them. And I say that would be better for both parties. Because for as long as they're on the front, see themselves as on the front line of the war against the Jews, by being in Gaza, they're going to feel the need to constantly go on the attack. This notion that we reinvest in Gaza and let them rebuild, it's insane. That investment will go down the tubes immediately because they'll just use it towards fighting Israel again. If it was the case that the population dramatically, there was a dramatic majority that wanted peace with Israel and it was just they're being held hostage by their government, fine. But that's not the case. Name me one Palestinian leader that genuinely gives you hope that they could have reconciliation with Israel. The one we had in our history, of Israel's history to date, was Yasser Arafat. How did that work out? Who was given the best deal possible, basically. He walks away and instigates the intifadas. Israel's got the green light from America. So she should do whatever she needs to do. And even the idea of relocation, which everyone was too afraid to say, the president is talking about that. Every other country, people say, oh, isn't that, unacceptable ethnic cleansing? We haven't wanted to do any of this. We've wanted to live alongside the Arabs. They have chosen time and again war. And then you say, well, of course they chose war because you displaced them. Wrong. They waged war against... There was a two-state solution proposed. They waged war against Israel because Israel existed. And they got displaced in that war where they tried to annihilate. The only one that wants ethnic cleansing and genocide has been the Palestinian side, the Arab side. And Israel has every right to say, we faced a people and a government that for nearly 100 years has sought our destruction, our genocide. We now have a right to say, it's time for a radical solution. And by the way, this will benefit both parties. Because if you don't see yourself as on the front lines of a war against the Jews, they'll end up probably choosing to lead much more peaceful lives in their indigenous Arab homelands. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.